Hello, my name is Brittany Rose DeCourcy, and I am going to go over why I suspect I might have autism spectrum disorder, and yeah. Fair warning, the neighborhood is loud. I do live in a trailer park, and I am not prepared for this. But let's just go down the list and kind of cover why I think it is what it is. So I have compiled the official DSM-5 as well as autism traits that are found in women that we have discovered so far. And I've separated them into 4 separate categories. The DSM-5 has 3. A lot of females with autism end up having, and males actually, but a lot of females end up having physical issues and comorbidities. So that's why I expanded it. I am not a medical or mental health professional. I am not certified. I am not licensed. I am just a civilian who was curious and decided to be informed. So, let's get right into it. First, we have social deficits. Now, that covers emotional reciprocity, nonverbal instances, issues with relationships, need to camouflage, and avoiding eye contact, or issues with eye contact. So, starting with emotional reciprocity, no, I have not been able to navigate social norms very well, no matter how deep I have scripted myself. I have always been considered the weird kid, a little off. Much of my school life I had friends, but they were friends my family had found for me. And until I was in 4th grade, where I was drawing in class, and for the first time, one of the kids actually came over, stayed with me for a bit, and actually talked with me. So from that point on, I had a deep interest in art as a means of compensating for my social skills. And before that, before the age of 3, but really, really deeply after the age of 3, I still have a deep fascination with paleontology. I love dinosaurs. I like dinosaurs. They're awesome. There's so much to learn about. But anyways, nobody wants to talk about dinosaurs. I mean, they do, but not right now. So, a lot of times I would have social interactions where I would not respond right, or I would think I was doing the right thing and get in trouble for it. Like, for instance, we had one girl in our class who had developmental issues and a learning disorder, and so we were fairly understanding of that, but she was kind of a jerk and very self-centered, and a lot of my classmates really did not like her, but somehow I ended up being the one who had to hang out with her, and it seemed like an obligation because we would pair off into groups or any number of social activities in education, and while we could work together, I was not fond of her, but she needed friends. My family, I was raised on Christian values, and the is friendship is your greatest power. Uh, I, I, uh, ideology. And so, yes, I wanted to make friends with everyone I could, and I wanted to be a good friend, but she was not a good friend. And so I told her about the opinion of the group, and I remember being deeply scolded by my teachers, my parents, her parents, and all of that for telling the truth, for just stating what people had told me. I didn't even give my personal opinion. I think the implication I was making was, maybe treat me a little better, because despite this, I am still your friend and trying to be kind to you and work with you. That did not work well. So my friends and I were considered the odd ones. Sometimes we were actually social leaders. We would start games that involved everyone, and we kept stories interesting, and we would defend those who were being bullied, and it was a problem for our teachers. I remember there was a time where we weren't allowed to play with jump ropes because of that. But I ended up being sent to a private school in 4th grade, and there I was well behind the other students, but it was clear that there were certain subjects where, if left to my own devices, I could excel at learning and remembering and utilizing information. So I got second place during the geography bee. I took part in the spelling bee every year. I was very active in the arts. I loved art. It's a way of translating the world. But I was never really accepted, and a lot of my peers found great pleasure in pushing me into meltdown and then laughing at the results. And I did manage to get a small group of friends, because it was a smaller school and all that. But when I was 11 or 12, my mother got sick, and for 2.5 years she fought illness and eventually succumbed to it. During that time, my father was still working, and both my parents had to travel between Seattle and home for medical treatments. And so, them not being there, I was often sent to Juneau to go to school where my aunt lives, and I would stay with her. And while I was at school in Juneau, I managed to make a large group of friends. I think we were the largest group at that school at that time. And in retrospect, I knew this at the time. They were each very open with their diagnoses, or the fact that they were not normal. But that was an entirely neurodiverse group of friends, and I still treasure each of them and keep in touch with a few of them. But that gave me the confidence to find my own people and develop a good social group while I was in high school. Despite that, we were not healthy. I experienced quite a bit of trauma while I was growing up and throughout high school and my adult life. And after my mom died, it became unbearable. I was having constant cries for help and tried to end my life multiple times. One time it got serious enough that I ended up in the hospital and spent 2 weeks in the mental ward in Fairbanks. But at that point in time, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I didn't understand any of that until I was about 22. But I continue to struggle in relationships. It took... I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at it, but it has taken years to develop the sensibilities to understand who is good to keep in my life and who I need to stay away from. And that had to be learned through experience. And out of that, I have a daughter in the world who I could not raise. We found a family for her, but it is what it is. And in my adult life, I have had so many issues understanding social hierarchies, what's expected of me, how to respond properly, what I should make my face into, and what I should speak to people about at what time, that I have not been able to maintain a job for longer than 2 years. And each of those jobs that I was able to keep for longer than a year were grocery work. One because it was a family friend who knew I needed employment, and the other because it's a small town, and that is one of 3 grocery stores, and nobody really wants to work there because it's terribly managed. But I was persistent, and I did not know about my condition, my neurodiversity at that time. I was still recovering from my borderline personality disorder, of which I still have each of the 9 traits, which have been masked into less harmful expression. And I have lost jobs because of my sense of justice, and because of my physical and mental limitations, burning myself out, and disagreements with higher-ups for innocuous reasons. And I didn't lose. My boyfriend of 9 years ended up leaving me because we stayed together for so long because we didn't have anyone else. We were both traumatized, and we were pretty much the only ones we could rely on. I wouldn't say trust, because trust issues are a thing. And that's not that that's not that they deserve to be untrusted. It's that each of us personally had trust issues. Since parting ways, we have both realized that we are most likely on the spectrum, both of us, and that's why we were able to get along and reason through our problems through so many tumultuous times. But that was not a healthy relationship. I am in a good, healthy relationship now because I have taught myself what to look for. I have taught myself how to communicate effectively. I often have to force myself to find the words. And or communicate non-verbally. Body language, facial expression, noises, and notion. Yeah. And that is where we move on to the nonverbal tendencies. When something doesn't make sense, surprises me, overwhelms me, or infuriates me, I tend to be unable to hold conversation. It has improved because I am taking active effort towards this, but it's that my brain cannot sort through the knowledge and scripts fast enough, or that it feels that I would not be validated or that there would be no reason to respond. And so I don't. And yeah, I have been trying to work on this with my current partner, but it still happens from time to time. I'm realizing no matter how safe or comfortable I feel, I will never truly feel as though I can express myself appropriately. Even if I do express myself appropriately. And the reason that this has been hidden for so long is because, due to my limitations in childhood from my social interactions, having so many issues with other people, be them children, adults, whatever, despite getting high marks on behavioral grading. Like, there were tea parties where we got awards for how well we remembered proper procedure, and little pageants of this and stuff. I could go through the motions and do the right things, and it still would not have the reasonable expected result. And I'm not sure why that is, if it's because it's so easy to quickly identify neurodivergence by the majority-minded people, or if I just executed the performance incorrectly. And part of camouflaging is that I have had to learn how to accept human contact, physical contact, and find ways to engage eye contact with other people. It's not easy. I find that the eyes tell so much more than the person does. From the way the pupil dilates, to where they're looking, to the amount of muscle movement and which muscle groups are moving in their expressions. It's overwhelming. When they say the eyes are the window to the soul, it's because of how much information can be conveyed by studying a person's gaze. And I believe this covers concerns in regards to the first criteria of social deficits. Most of my relationships and friendships have either lasted for years, in which we have periods of no contact, and because we are who we are, we understand that a lot of times we don't have the mental capacity, the emotional intelligence, or even the means of keeping in touch. But I find it hard to make connections, and for the longest time I would be far too earnest in building those connections or burning those bridges as part of my borderline symptoms from severe emotional dysregulation and relationship insecurity. So now we are going to move on to the second criteria, which concerns restrictive or repetitive patterns of behavior. And this ranges from repetitive movements, an insistence on routine or consistency, creating social scripts and finding a format to the flow of conversation, dietary restrictions, often called safe foods, or having issues with texture, consistency, having difficulty with transitions, a lot of times when I make a transition in life, be it a status quo, a location change, even the change from dirty to clean, or vice versa. It's difficult. And that leads to emotional distress when at small changes or big changes. There's definitely emotional distress at big changes, but that's actually expected in the majority mind, I suppose. But the small changes, like a change in schedule, or moving up an appointment, or setting back an appointment, or having to make a change to your daily routine because something wasn't prepared. This can cause some extreme emotional dysregulation. I try to find ways to deal with it, but it happens every time. I apparently scare my loved ones when they show up without prior notice, or if they are not on time and haven't contacted me as to the reason. I clearly express a certain discomfort. I am not angry at them at all, and they know this. They know very well. It's still not a pleasant experience. And then there is also executive dysfunction in these restrictive or repetitive patterns of behavior. And in this, a lot of times I never know what to expect each day when I wake up. I don't know what my body is going to do. I don't know what my mind's going to do. I can try to prepare as much as possible, but when I have things that I need to do, a lot of times I cannot do them, and I will be paralyzed for hours. I often forget to eat. I have periods where I can't shower for a month or more. I've had troubles navigating systems, all sorts of systems, and it's overwhelming to the point where the only way that I can avoid paralysis is forced rest or engagement in flow state. This is an extreme problem. There are a lot of times where I have been working and I can't remember how to do basic tasks, or I just can't make myself do them. I ended up shaving off my eyebrows, getting a cat, and growing houseplants in order to give me responsibilities so that I have to do something every single day. Just so I can try to regulate and have some semblance of normalcy. So, in the way of repetitive movements, I do. I bounce back and forth a lot of times. I will move my body forward and backward in a small enough way that it's not obvious that I am rocking, because it makes people uncomfortable. But I do rock. I used to get in trouble because I was in tap, and I would practice my tap dancing all the time, and people hate that so much. The noise gets to them. I bounce my legs. I tend to have a lot of hand stims. Yeah. In what I do, I have to organize certain things or pick up certain things in order to maintain my mental state, like just adjusting something so that it's lined up on an invisible grid, or using art theory to adjust the presentation of something, whether or not it is my responsibility. A lot of times I would go to play with my toys, still do, and I can't. I will get my toys ready, have them set up, put cute outfits on my dolls, do their hair, get them set up all in a scene to get started, and instantly lose interest. Unless I continue making things look nice. Or yeah. So I have taught myself to accept chaos, as it is inherent in all things in life. But my brain still requires that I organize everything in some way, shape, or form. By color, by position, by size, by direction, by theme. And I have been able to utilize art theory enough to where I can accept certain choices people make, as it is a decision by the creative mind, and that I can accept that I do not need to appreciate what they've done. Not genuinely. I can compliment them, I can make note on their decisions and skill in doing so, but I need not personally like it. I have routines that I have to stick to every day. I've been drinking coffee since the age of 2 with my mother, and back when I was a kid, it wasn't every day. It was a rare occasion until I was about 12 or 13. And at that point in time, I could start buying my own coffee, so I had a problem with energy drinks and drinking coffee. I carried a cup of coffee to every single class I went to in high school. The culinary teacher was a very good friend of mine. I have trouble sleeping because I don't actually have a sleep regimen that I undergo. I know that. And if I work, I have pretty much a 2-hour preparation period that I need to undergo. Otherwise, I oftentimes implode. I have been able to expand my palate to include most foods, but I have severe issues with texture, consistency, even presentation. I can eat slop, but I cannot eat snot-looking slop, or anything that doesn't appear to be cooked right. And yeah, I have a lot of digestive issues that I have not been able to sort out the cause of. Making dietary adjustments has improved the conditions, but they are still quite present. I believe this covers the restricted or repetitive patterns of behavior. So, I like schedules. I get deeply upset when I have a work schedule that is constantly changing or changes out of the blue. I can take on extra shifts or drop shifts, but if my schedule changes, I become extremely emotionally dysregulated. But next we are going to focus on the fixed interests portion of the diagnostic criterion. So, hyper or hyporeactivity, you either overreact or underreact to certain stimuli, a lot of times in social situations or environmental factors. I was well known for having tunnel vision. If I was writing, if I was reading, if I was drawing, if I was playing a game, if I was playing with the sand, if I was engaged in anything, sometimes it would take, and sometimes this wouldn't even work, but physically grabbing me and shaking me, or a couple times I was slapped to get my attention. And I can be very reactive to stimuli, to the point of laughing till tears, having emotional distress, oftentimes being stimulated by things unknown to others. Like there are little moments in videos where a noise or the way somebody moves or something that happens, I lose my shit. I end up laughing hysterically and we need to stop it until I'm done. Or I get deeply upset. Like one instance is in the movie The Brothers Grimm. There is a scene with a cat, and my mother and sister thought it was hilarious to call my attention to it while I was actively trying to ignore the scary film, and I was enjoying my art. And I had a complete breakdown. I felt betrayed, and was deeply invalidated for my experience. There are certain facts of the world where if I am reminded of them, I grieve all over again. There are certain little motions and noises that I remember watching a video of some cats on loop, and I would rewind this second, and people had to stop me because I was doing it for like 2 or 3 hours at a time. There's this moment where these cats are just meowing, and one of them looks down, looks up, and meows. And something about that just cracks me up. It's facial expressions, it's little moments. And this happens all the time. It's really hard to narrow down certain examples. There's a scene in the anime Seven Deadly Sins where there's everything's coming to a nice, happy conclusion, and they're starting to walk off into the distance, and I made a joke that, and now the main character dies. And the episode ends with a block of rock coming out and falling on said character. And, it was hilarious. It is hilarious. Just any number of things. I am overreactive, I am underreactive. A lot of times people have to ask me if I'm even listening. I've been snapped at so many times. Literally snapped. I mean, yes, snapped at, but the snapping. I'm just gonna move on. So, next we have intense abnormal interests. Intense and or abnormal interests. And yes, I have always had intense interests. And yes, I have quite a few abnormal interests. I love dinosaurs. I love psychology. I love biology. I love the way the world works on a micro and macro scale. I love the way people think and interact with the world, and how they conceptualize it. And growing up in a Christian household, it was not exactly encouraged that I look into other religions and the history behind each of them. Thankfully, my mom was known as the local craft lady, so a lot of times we would try different crafts, and I would become deeply obsessed with them. But because my parents focused on raising well-rounded children, we were forced to disengage from our special interests and start new ones. And it got to the point where I would be able to start a new interest. I would get very good at that interest, and then I would drop it like a hot potato. This happened in dance. This happened with martial arts. This happened with crafts and arts. I do have some steady, long-term special interests, like computer design, art, yes, history, like I mentioned, the lasting ones, like I love dinosaurs, and computers. Very much interested in computers. I was building computers in 6th grade. I took computer courses throughout high school, and it was to the point where I would do the assignment in less than an hour, and then I would spend the entire week, because that's how long we had to work on the assignment, and I had agreement with my teacher for this. I would help the other students understand what to do, and then I would design websites, I would create art in Photoshop, I would make my way through the Office suite, trying different tricks and stuff. But that's a very expensive habit, and I have not been able to afford a computer that can support that habit very well since 2010, 11. And honestly, the disconnection from having access to a good functional computer that allows me to generate artwork, program websites, design video games, it has been crippling. Every time I get a chance to plug a tablet into a computer, I end up overworking the computer because it is not designed for high load. To the point where a lot of times my artwork was made in Microsoft Paint, or I had to use online generators. I would use like iScribble, or there were Oikaki sites. Anyways, yes, I have a deep interest in computers, and that has allowed me to optimize the cheapest laptop that I could find at Walmart that wasn't a Chromebook, to, one, make this video, and two, try to generate business online. Anyways, I can go on about my interests endlessly. Do not get me started on religion. I am fascinated with history. I'm not the most versed, as I did not have the best education in it. Art. I love animals. A lot of animals, and I love weird animals. Part of the abnormal interests is I have a deep love for creepy crawlies. And scary animals. So I have an obsession with crocodilians. Caimans are adorable. Alligators are good boys. They're like puppy dogs. Crocodiles are very intelligent. My brain is still confused by gharials. That's a weird evolutionary decision. And now we have crocodilians who are developing fish tails. I have seen. Moving on. Next we have sensory issues with sensory overload and understimulation. I have to have white noise going constantly. From people talking, to television shows, to music, to, like, certain motors, like fans and stuff. Because they're There are so many noises in the world. There are barking dogs. There are people talking. I can hear people talking from far too far away. It sounds like they are right outside my house when they are about a block down the road. I can hear the electric lights. I can hear when there's something that isn't plugged in all the way. I can hear people's bodily functions, so I can hear when they are getting uncomfortable. I can hear when their joints are having issues. It's a great way to tell the weather. Lights can overwhelm me. A lot of lights flicker. Or, they're... I have to carefully manage my lighting in my home to adjust my mood. I have a lot of internal sensory issues where I can tell what's going on with my body most of the time, but there's not a instant or direct causation to what's going on, and so a lot of times I will ignore my body because there's nothing wrong with me. I'm only coming to terms with the fact that I have a lot of medical issues because I was taught to ignore them. I've suffered from migraines for a lot of my life. This leads to eating disorders because I cannot trust my sense in myself, and a lot of times it's hard to make myself eat something if I don't want to the point where I often made nutrient pastes, powders, mixes to force down my gullet so that I wouldn't starve. And survival has had to be one of my obsessions, because I have had to use that information many times in my life. I spent a period of about a year being homeless in Anchorage, and I have been struggling financially my entire life, meaning that the threat of homelessness or not being able to afford food or warmth or clothes or to afford to go to work for any number of reasons, like making sure I eat food and stay nutritionally well, or that I can make sure that I eat or sleep, or making sure that I can get dressed and that I can wear what I'm dressed in that day, and clothing. Clothing is interesting. I love fashion. That is a more recent interest of mine. It's been an interest of mine for a long time, but I did not understand the theory behind it until recently. But it comes down to dress up and comfort. And a lot of times I have to dress up to seem functional and be a part of society. And a lot of times when I'm comfortable, it's Well, it's comfortable. It doesn't have to look nice. It can look nice, and I love makeup. It's part of art. It's part of fashion. I was a makeup artist for a time. But I've never been able to continue my education other than doing trade school, where I learned concrete work because it was the second highest paying trade on site. And I liked to play in the mud, and I liked learning about the chemical reactions in cement. I tried to go back to school, and I managed to be in school for 3 months. Not because I couldn't do the schoolwork, but because I could not endure the financial stress from mismanagement, and I did not have a means to ensure that I was well informed and I love school. I love school. I would love to continue my education, and I would love to find a career field that I could actually pursue and maintain. I can put up with all of the social issues and sensory issues if I can continue learning. But I cannot deal with financial stress because it has been a huge trauma in my life and ongoing. So, right, we're talking about sensory issues. As for understimulation, I taught myself how to disassociate. I suffered from maladaptive daydreaming to the point where I would go into a fugue state, and apparently I would go do stuff. I would meet people that I did or didn't know. I don't think I knew them. Not me personally. And I still can't remember what happened during those times. There were a couple of them that I was able to remember. But and I would get in trouble for fidgeting and doing my own thing. My books, my sketchbooks, my phone, my erasers and pencils would be taken away because I couldn't sit still, and people thought I wasn't paying attention. And then I had to learn to stop bouncing, stop fidgeting, stop moving. I would have to wiggle my toes invisibly. Like, I could not let myself touch the edge of my shoe because they could see the movement in my toes. And that disassociation got to the point where, yes, I would be paralyzed for hours. I may not be moving physically, but I was having entire adventures and breaking down, like, my understandings of subjects and facts and all sorts of stuff. I would be doing so much in my mind because I wasn't allowed to do anything in my real life. To the point where I was suspected of having schizophrenia because of stress-induced hallucinations. And I have had to take active efforts to separate my internal and external world. Utilizing science, history, spirituality, and taking the conscious time and effort to make distinction between sensations generated from my neural system to external stimuli. I still have questions from time to time in regards to separating reality and the unreal, but I can tell the difference. I can. And then I'm gonna move into the fourth category that I have here that is not included in the DSM, but it is prevalent in autistic people, is that they have physical symptoms. The neurological state that they are constantly in forms their reality, and their body makes adjustments accordingly. And so, dysregulated sleep. This is very common. I suffer from bouts of insomnia, or periods where I have to sleep like 12 to 16 hours a day. I have to take naps for regulation. I have to sometimes stay awake in order to be able to do work, because I am more active in the wee hours. I try to get to sleep by midnight. Some nights I can sleep by 6, 7 p.m. That is very rare. That is a very rare thing, and oftentimes it's because I've spent a few days sleep deprived. But most nights, I end up unable to force myself to sleep until about 2 to 6 in the morning. Then I try to wake up by 10 every day. When I don't have my routine, I can sometimes sleep in until about 3 p.m. And there are times where I will go days without sleep. I used to go 3 to 5 days without sleep as a regular occurrence, and I would oftentimes be manic during these bouts. I try to do everything I can to prevent that from happening again, because I think that had a lot of impact on my nervous system. And then next we have hormone imbalances. As we enter puberty and go through the change, oftentimes females with autism are comorbid with depression and anxiety. Now, this, I'm fairly certain, not my professional opinion, because I'm not a professional, but I am certain that the depression and anxiety comes from the lack of being able to form close bonds with like-minded individuals, because we are so self-conscious about being accepted. And whether that's because our support network is wrongly informed on what is considered normal for the type of people that we actually are, as opposed to what we are supposed to be in order to fit into the majority. And because we have issues regulating our emotions, because it is so much at that time, we become anxious and hollow and self-loathing and all sorts of wonderful repercussions from being outcast and not having our needs met. I'm going to go through a list of comorbidities that have a high possibility of developing in autistic individuals. So we have anxiety. That's a big one. I am hypervigilant a lot of times and have to force myself to relax. Brain fog. This was something that, this was the biggest step that I had to, the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome in order to begin the path of recovery. Brain fog. When you are just unable to bring yourself to what is going on. When you're unable to think, when you're unable to operate. This is one of the contributing factors to paralysis. Next we have bipolar disorder. And this is often misdiagnosed. There are plenty of people who do have bipolar disorder, but a lot of times what it is it is an autistic individual who has been so invalidated and traumatized that they develop brain damage. And that's where I got the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, because my bipolar wasn't able to be maintained. I couldn't keep my emotional state regulated. So the natural highs and lows that my hormonal pattern would put me through were deeply affected by real-world factors. Yes, bipolar is very commonly diagnosed with neurodivergent folks. Next we have bowel disease. This comes from our nutritional dysregulation. I don't think it ever stops. What it would take is probably a full system rehabilitation. I'm talking parasite removal. I'm talking a cleanse of the passageways and a reparation period. And then, digestive issues are a problem. Next we have depression. It's a hard fucking life. So of course we're a little bit sad about it. Persistently sad about it. Developmental coordination disorder. This, I think it's poor proprioception is what I heard it called, but coordination's not the best. Yes, I was a dancer, but that was the only time that I was graceful. I have bruises constantly because I beat myself with stationary objects. It's not that I mean to, it's just what happens. Next, a lot of people are comorbid with epilepsy. Now, I don't I think this comes from the neurological damage from complex post-traumatic stress. Yes, I do not believe that I have developed epilepsy. I've made concerted efforts to repair my brain, but I did notice that a lot of times I would have to find some time alone, and I would allow myself to spaz out. I would sometimes I would disassociate. Most of the time I would not, but I needed to release the trauma, and that physical disruption seemed to be the only way. I'm not sure what Fragile X syndrome is. There is also gender dysphoria. Now that I am feminine presenting, but I don't feel as though I have a set gender, per se. I adhere to the possibility that each of us is capable of being, doing, feeling, experiencing anything and everything any other human has, and then some. So, there's a little gender dysphoria. A little, but I am female presenting, so it's just easier to be a woman, even though it's not easier to be a woman. Trying to act like how I am inside does not it's not well received. Next we have hypermobility spectrum disorder and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This, you'll hear about broken wrist syndrome while you're sleeping, or when you're looking at something. You'll hear about T-Rex arms or hamster hands. The hitchhiker's thumb, being able to straighten out your fingers for the most part, is overextending yourself causes joint issues, and a lot. The repetitious movement can also cause joint issues. There's a lot to this. It's a genetic thing, and I am currently in the process of contacting my insurance and hopefully getting tested for it. It's a thing. Abnormal folate metabolism and abnormal redox metabolism. I'm not sure what that means. We have neurotransmitter anomalies. Makes sense. Mitochondrial diseases, a lot of autoimmune disorders in women, especially on the spectrum. Neurofibromutations, mitochondrial diseases, neurofibromatosis, neuroinflammation and immune disorders, neuropathies, nonverbal learning disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, psychosis and schizophrenia, I mentioned earlier, schizoid personality disorder, sensory problems, reduced NMDA receptor function, sleep disorders, tinnitus, Tourette's syndrome, tuberous sclerosis, vitamin deficiencies. I was anemic for the longest time. Other mental disorders, intellectual disability, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADHD and autism are comorbid around 84% of the time. At least that's the last I saw, statistics-wise. So this is just... This is a list of diagnostic criteria, symptoms, and concerns, and why I strongly believe that I may be on the spectrum. And I don't know how to get help. I know some. I know some information to try to get help, and I am trying to contact certain organizations and stuff. But I am disabled. I have been disabled my entire life. And I have known it. And I need others to as well. And I need I need to be able to build my life on the right foundations with the proper supports. And while I have done everything I can to accommodate myself and work my way through recovery, I need help, and I don't know how to prove that I need help, and I don't know how to get the help once I do. So, here I am, living in a trailer, unemployed, trying to start a business, failing expertly, living off of less than $10 and food stamps. So, it is what it is, and I hope it gets better, and I hope that this helps me get help. Yeah. I'm currently trying to get unemployment because I was fired for asking for reasonable accommodations. And I'm trying to get my medical stuff in order. There is an assessment in December, and I asked for an autism screening, but I'm not sure. It was supposed to be one last time, and it wasn't. So, I want to be able to help people, and I want to be able to create and contribute and connect and be a good, functional, and positive influence in a community. But I am so stressed. I am in so much pain. I'm about to run out of propane. I need to somehow make rent. My internet's about to be turned off, and that's part of the organizations I'm hoping to contact, is hopefully getting assistance with that. But this system is so hard to navigate. And it has been really hard to come to terms with the reality that has been my life. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got for you. I hope this helps with understanding autism. I hope this helps with understanding the experience of neurodivergence. And I hope I just hope I don't know what for. I hope it'll be better.